After so many years of dreaming of it, life on Mars was almost a reality. Humanity was so close to finally, officially, being able to call the neighboring planet a second home. Slowly but surely, hundreds of very significant missions from all over the world have done incredible work to make this dream come true. The atmosphere of the planet was almost ready to be completely safe for humans to breathe naturally. All the primary buildings were standing proudly. It wasn't all just scientific bases anymore. There were hospitals, offices, hotels, and more. The first set of carefully planned neighborhoods were halfway done. The first few hundred inhabitants would be arriving very soon. One of the most important parts about making a new planet completely habitable for humans was making sure it was possible to harvest food. For decades, the best scientists have dedicated their lives to studying Mars' surface and soil, and the way our usual seeds reacted to it all. The process was succeeding greatly. It was proved that not only people on Mars could grow perfectly good fruits and vegetables, but also some lively flowers to make life just as colorful on a new planet. However, this red planet had its secrets. It comes as no surprise that human scientists aren't content with one discovery, with one success, with just one hypothesis confirmed. It is even less surprising that, under the motivation of profit, humans are unafraid to cross all boundaries, break all rules, skip over all warnings. Sometimes this could be rewarding and the source of some of the things humanity has created. But sometimes this greed can be responsible for the greatest horrors, the most catastrophic consequences, and the absolute worst-case scenario possible. In this case, everything started on the big facility where the agricultural development was taking place. More precisely, on a small building on its side. This discreet, almost unnoticeable place existed in a very confidential way. The people that worked there rarely left the building. They had dormitories on the upper floor, and they avoided interaction with all other fellow scientists. This extreme level of secrecy was due to the experiments that took place in that malicious and immoral building. It was called the Dark Venus Unit. Not an irony toward the planet, but in honor of the Venus flytrap, an infamous subject there. The Dark Venus Unit worked under the leadership of the brothers Gabe and Evan Clayton. Occasionally, some careful assistants passed by the unit, always under a mountain of non-disclosure agreements. But they never lasted long. This was due to many reasons. Partially, it was because the Clayton brothers weren't particularly kind and welcoming to strangers. Plus, they were extremely jealous and protective of their work. But a big part of the assistants' resistance to long-lasting work was because of the subject of the work itself. The things that the young scientists saw in the Dark Venus Unit were fascinating at first, but soon they would be troubling, and then problematic. But soon enough, they were utterly disturbing things. As soon as they walked down the stairs toward the basement of the building, though, every single one of them quit the day after. So most of the time, it was just Gabe and Evan. They worked diligently and passionately. They devoted their lives to the plants growing in the Dark Venus Unit. They put their entire hearts into their work. But, as most people might argue upon discovering the horrible secrets these two men were responsible for, they had vile, dark, and venomous hearts. Before everything ended tragically, it started with a normal day. On the upper floor, Evan woke up in the mid-morning, feeling good about his day. He went through his morning routine and the basics of living in a secret laboratory on the surface of Mars. A healthy breakfast, a shower, a pristine suit, and a lab coat, and nobody could have guessed the things he had created. Then he descended to the main floor of the laboratory, where things could be unsettling for some people, but at first glance it was mostly just beautiful. There it was in all its glory, rows upon rows of the most incredible plants someone could imagine. Things that shouldn't be possible were made possible by Gabe and Evan. That was their job. They didn't manipulate the soil from Mars to adapt to the Earth's seed. They combined both and created unimaginable things. There was a section of fruits that, although beautiful, could melt human flesh. There was a table filled with rose bushes that vibrated and buzzed, and if cut from the stems, could move by themselves for days. Vegetables of impossible colors, leaves of irrational textures, roots moved like tentacles under the soil, and branches had hissed and grumbled when touched. Evan would spend his morning tending to these beautiful and sometimes hardly comprehensible plants he was responsible for. But first things first, he needed to check the specimens in the basement. That's where his brother would be waiting for him. Gabe took the night shift and Evan the day shift. But this day, things were different. Evan was walking toward the door that led to the basement when said door was slammed open. "Good, you're awake," Gabe said. He didn't look very relieved, though. He was sweating. His own tie was missing, and his entire self looked more than a little disheveled. "Lucy is giving me some trouble today," Gabe explained. The news made Evan gulp nervously. He was proud of their work. He didn't harvest a single regret in his heart. In fact, if given the chance to go even farther and test even more dangerous extremes, he would do so without batting an eyelash. That, however, didn't mean he couldn't experience fear of his own creations. Silently, the two brothers descended the stairs. There, they were greeted only by dim lighting, a tepid smell, and nearly suffocating humidity. The creatures in the basement preferred complete darkness, but the Clayton siblings weren't so sure they could survive down there without at least a little light. The basement worked very differently from the main floor. Down there were no tables, no order, and no rules. By the time Gabe and Evan discovered the unbelievable properties of the Mars surface, they decided to take two routes. They would harvest tulips that floated an inch above their stems on the main floor of the lab, and in the basement, they would grow their organic beasts. "How is everyone?" Evan asked, as he did every day upon descending the last step from the staircase and into the damp soil. His brother sighed gravely. He didn't have time for the usual routine, but he did his best. They passed by each of their most bizarre experiments. Bobby is in good shape, but he's nervous. He can sense there's something bad going on around him. Then Gabe pointed toward a 4-foot-tall translucent egg of gelatinous texture that had spurred, initially from a simple pumpkin seed. Debbie is under control as well. She's burning at just a slightly higher temperature than usual, but I don't think there's a reason to be concerned yet. Then Gabe waved toward a climbing plant that covered one corner of the room. From its blossoms somehow flower small rivers of burning lava, which pooled at that one impenetrable corner, kept contained by a special barrier about a foot tall. "And that's it," Gabe stated grimly. "What do you mean?" His brother inquired a little breathlessly. "What about Thomas?" A sort of cactus that grew under a protective glass dome due to its ability to shoot its thorns at random intervals. And the twins? A pair of immense Venus flytraps with sharp teeth that constantly tried to eat each other. "And they're gone, Evan!" Gabe snapped. "Lucy attacked, okay? She ate them all." There was a moment of tense silence, and each brother knew exactly what the other was thinking. Lucy was the best and worst of their creations. Like most things that had been left in the basement, Lucy was born as an accident. They experimented with different seeds from Earth and different treatments to the soil from Mars. One day they got a leaf, and it was stronger than steel. They watched in awe as the Lucy grew. More and more leaves getting bigger, heavier, stronger, impenetrable, unkillable. It was an extremely complex plant resembling a moss-green crab the size of a crocodile that slithered freely in the darkness of that secret basement. Then the roots started moving and leaving the earth underneath and exploring the expanse of the room. Soon enough, they confirmed their suspicions. Lucy had developed a conscience. Before Evan could ask, Gabe said it. She went underground. I can't find her, but I can feel her moving underneath my feet, I think. She's waiting to attack. I don't care what you think, Evan. I'm calling this off, and I'm going to go get help. As if their devilish plant had listened to her creator speaking ill of her, she silently creeped out from the soil and attacked. But not the Clayton brothers. No. First, the monster raised a powerful leaf in the air and struck Bobby, the mysterious egg. It cracked and spilled in a furious splash, leaking something akin to amniotic fluid all over the ground. The smell was awful, but the real bone-chilling factor was the nearly deafening cry of a baby, or whatever frightening thing was lying at the bottom of the broken egg. With their shoes wet and their hearts racing, the Clayton brothers didn't even have time to react before they heard an even more alarming crash, like a hammer coming down on a building. Lucy's steel-like leaves came down on the barrier that kept the lava contained, and suddenly it was starting to spill forward. Evan and Gabe started screaming. They ran toward the stairs, but from the ground a massive leaf burst out, blocking their way and threatening to smash them down. They tried to turn to their right, but the lava was spreading faster and faster. They switched to their left, but the baby's cries were growing louder and louder, though not enough to hide the sound of a third and maybe fourth set of footsteps splashing on the spilled liquid. Refusing to see the monsters they had created, the brothers ran in the opposite direction, even though there was no exit. They scurried from side to side, but they still felt the ground trembling underneath their feet with the power of an unexplainable creature hunting them down. Finally, Evan grabbed his brother's arms and stopped him. Then he told him, Lucy was mine, right from the beginning. I'd let this go for too long. Go get help, or let us destroy ourselves here quietly. But save yourself. Evan pushed his brother as hard as he could away from him. Gabe fell down near the stairs, and he had no option but to watch his brother stand tall, while 5 massive leaves erupted from the ground and stood menacingly over him. Mercifully, the last of the light bulbs went out in that instant. The 2 brothers screamed in agony at the same time, but only one of them made it out of there alive.